registered nutritionist, maturation coach, executive coach, and Reiki practitioner, amongst other things. But what I do is I support people in navigating this crazy thing that we call life, whether that's in the depths of grief or illness, whether we're going through divorce or heartbreak. I support people in those big life transitions. What I wanted to talk to you about today is grief. It's the 5th of December. We're coming into the Christmas season, and I always find this season such a paradox. The expectations of joy and happiness and love and laughter are really very high. But it's also a time when we can look on at families, we can see people seemingly having those joyful experiences. And if it's not that way for us, it can feel really, really difficult. We might have lost someone that we love. It might be the first Christmas without those people, and in my experience, the firsts, whether that's Christmas or anniversaries or birthdays, can be really difficult and bring up a lot. But grief isn't just about losing people we love. You might have been on a fertility journey and you look on at families and see people with children, and you can feel the grief in your heart. You might have experienced a relationship breakdown. You may not be with your family this year. You may feel lonely. All of this is grief, but we don't always express it or talk about it in that way. So grief can be really prevalent at this time of year. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge it. You know, we often think it has to be one thing or another, that we have to be happy or joyful, or we're sad or feel our sadness in our hearts. But actually, we can feel both of those things. Coming up to this time of year, I feel the loss of my mother, and I can be with my family in the joy and the laughter and the happiness. Sometimes, not all the times. But it can be both of those things, or it can just be really difficult. And it's really important to acknowledge those feelings. We can try and push them away, push them down, ignore them, but they tend to come out. Grief can look in so many different ways. It can look like anger in a moment. It can look like sadness. It can look like withdrawal, taking yourself away. Sometimes we don't even know or understand it as grief. We can just be feeling off. I know that every time I put the Christmas decorations up, I kind of want to really drop in with my family and enjoy it. And actually this year I did, but usually there's something like wrestling within me, because that was what I always did with my mum. And that's the grief. It can sometimes look like a tension in the body, or something that just doesn't feel quite right. And so as we go into this season, I want to give you permission and space to acknowledge the grief that you might be feeling, to no longer ignore it or even hide it away. Perhaps you can acknowledge it for yourself first. Just talking to yourself or writing in your journal just about how you're feeling, what the grief's about, what it's associated with, if it's about somebody that you've loved and lost, or perhaps it's something or a way you thought your life would be that isn't here in this moment. And then you might be able to find a family member or a friend to confide in, not for them to fix you, just to simply voice how you're feeling in this moment, for someone to witness you. The important thing is to acknowledge it, because actually when we can be with it in that way, when we can acknowledge it, we no longer have that tussle that can happen in trying to get rid of it, in trying to move past it. The resistance creates kind of an inner battle. And when we allow ourselves to acknowledge it, it can just soften in the body and you can allow it to move through. Whatever your experience this Christmas, it's allowed. It doesn't have to look like all of the pictures, all of the Instagram stories. It can be just however it is for you in this moment. And that's the important thing. It doesn't need to look any particular way. And so I'm sending love to you at this time of year.